And the minute Rogan said Austin, literally Jules was there. She remembers. When he brought up Austin for the first time, that Joe Rogan, we said, it was like a Seinfeld episode, where about Del Boca Vista. We're not moving to Austin. It was final. And I remember I even felt bad telling my brother, we're not going to be.
You talked to him about it for like 6 months.
Yeah, I talked to my brother. My brother thought he was getting a new brother. And we're not going to be moving to Austin, actually. And he goes,
probably forgot to tell him. He's still expecting us.
I don't think I told him, but this is what I would tell him. I go, because all the comics you see, I cannot move there. That is a fool city now. And I haven't spoken to him since. I refuse to speak to somebody who would live by so near to all these fools of mine. So until he moves, he's no brother of mine. And but that's all more or less true. For real, that whole story I just told you. More or less true, and some additions added, of course, to make it cuter.
Barely any.
Barely any. Now, Saison Z, don't mention him. I will have a breakdown. Austin. So I've been guessing and hoping and wishing and praying that Austin doesn't work out, right? All the comics are going to flee LA. I thought that was such a tantrum move. Real leadership stays, fixes, helps. Joe Rogan fled. And the weakest ones followed. And the most selfish ones followed. Tim Dillon, I'm talking about you, who's doubting this whole move now. Because you knew it was stupid. But you went there because Rogan was granted and awarded 100 million Spotify bucks, which aren't good at stores. Wouldn't that be funny if the new article came out? It's like, turns out Joe Rogan's $100 million is only good for Spotify credit. TOS, in the TOS of his contract, Jules. Did you hear this? It's very funny. You would have loved that one.
Rogan's I was trying to look for better Austin music.
Joe Rogan's $100 million, though. It's the terms of, he didn't read them. In the terms, it says it's only good at Spotify credit.
Oh, yeah.
$100 million.
I love
that. That's something you would love. I wrote that for you.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, as soon as he got his 100 million, the weakest followed him. And anybody with a brain, even if you're the biggest Joe Rogan fan, you should be able to see a leader from a follower. And while Joe Rogan doesn't come off quite a follower, he's not a leader. Joe Rogan is a hard-headed, what do they call it? Stubborn person. But he is not a leader. Do not confuse stubbornism for leadership. Joe Rogan, it seems like, he's got it figured out. He's in charge. No. Joe Rogan stumbled upon to his success via a string of luck and right time, right placement. He's no leader. So to follow a man like this is to follow a man to your demise, you see. It's to follow a man off a cliff, and that's what they've done. So the ones that followed Rogan, chasing that $100 million, now, they might have even gotten a new house out of it, and this is true. Joe Rogan has been buying comics, whatever they need. He's been paying their rent. He's been paying their auto loans. He's bought comedians' cards. He's the David Dobrik.
He's probably bought comedians' coffee.
In cause! But do not confuse him for a leader. And we've said this since the beginning. And, since the beginning, I've been saying, what about, I've ran a comedy club in Chicago. It's extremely hard. And regardless of my testimony, all you need to know about how hard it is to run a comedy club is that in Chicago, which is it the third largest city in America? Okay. Someone yelled at me, I think, a couple weeks ago saying it wasn't.
Oh.
I don't know. That's like saying, how many states are there? I don't know. You don't yell at me. I'm just doing my closest. So in Chicago, here's all you need to know. Forget Redbar Comedy Club. In Chicago, prior to the Redbar Comedy Club, there were only 2 comedy clubs in a city of 6 million people, 8 million people, if you consider Chicagoland, the surrounding areas. There are only 2 comedy clubs. Now, those 2 comedy clubs were only open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And those 2 comedy clubs only sat like around 200 people tops. One of the comedy clubs sat 80 people. And they would have empty seats on Sundays, Thursdays, and even Fridays. So if 2 comedy clubs in the 3rd largest city in the country couldn't sell out shows 4 times a week, how the fuck is Austin going to fill up a comedy show every night of the week, and you have 16 different full-time clubs and then 52 different comedian-ran shows? Now, I don't know if people think about it like this. Now, when I ran the comedy club, we had 4 shows per weekend, and each show had to seat 200 to 250 people per show, and we had to fill all those seats. It was so much work in the city of Chicago. So much work. So I don't know how in Austin, where, I don't know how many people live in Austin. It can't be as much as Chicago. You've got every comedian moving from LA. I've said this before. It's nothing new. I'm just setting this back up. You got every comedian moving from LA thinking that they could just restart in LA, Los Angeles, the 2nd largest city in the world. And what I would say is probably the most famous city in the world, 2nd largest city in the country, most famous city in the world, Los Angeles, where every night half the city is tourists coming in. It's a 24-hour city. The Sunset Strip is where the Comedy Store was. That's why it was sold out every night, because you had tourists from all over the world, plus 10 million people who lived there already, and every celebrity and every comic, and the whole city was celebrity obsessed. All they wanted to do was go to these types of events. That is completely different than Austin, Texas. So you're moving every comedian from LA, and you think on a Tuesday night, Joe Rogan's Comedy Club is going to be a hopping place? You know, this is a city that has bragged about being open before everybody else, remember? Fuck quarantine! We hate these masks! We are Austin. We are so brave. Well, I hope you thought about this when you wished for the open... what do you call that? Marketplace, openness? What do they call it? The end of lockdown, because, now you got to fill the rooms, Tony. We're going to watch Tony on the Legion of Skanks brag about how amazing Austin is compared to all of our dumb cities that suck. Meanwhile, all of America is open right now. Tony is going to brag about Austin for being the most open, and then immediately we're going to cut to a tape showing that Antone's, after 3 to 4 weeks of being wide open, there are no more restrictions. Tony Hinchcliffe's show, Kill Tony at Antone's, is still only 30 to 35 occupants watching the show. The tables are still socially distantly spaced. And there could be less than 20 people in the room while Tony's doing his show. I don't understand. I've called Antone's 28 times. They will not answer their phone. I've even gone ahead and bought things from their shop in hopes to talk to their customer service people to ask, how come if you're so open and there are no more restrictions, it's the wonderful Texas, why is it that Antone's has socially distant tables and only 30 people in the room? Tony Hinchcliffe used to sell out the Comedy Store 300 people every night. 400 people. Why are there only 30 people? That's a huge failure. 30 people, by the way, watching a live comedy show is a giant failure.
And don't forget, we also have to hear what Whitney and Tim Dillon have to say about Austin.
So wait till you see. Basically, what's going on here right now is everything I predicted about this Austin has come true and more. Guys, this rules. Everything that we discuss and hate on this show ends up being in our favor. Everything.